Do you borrow phrases and concepts from other works in your own? If yes, then you're using intertextuality, perhaps even without knowing it. Though it sounds intimidating at first, it's quite a simple concept really. Intertextuality denotes the way in which text, any text, not just literature, gain meaning through the referencing or evocation of other texts. A famous example of intertextuality in literature is James Joyce's Ulysses, as a retelling of the Odyssey set in Dublin. Ernest Hemingway used the language of the metaphysical poet John Donne in naming his novel For Whom the Bell Tolls. Even the Bible is considered an instance of intertextuality since the New Testament quotes passages from the Old Testament. One very effective literary technique used by playwrights and writers is intertextuality. Montenegro Gasula's 2017 described intertextuality to be present when a text meaning, story, book, article, song, video, or movie is influenced by another text, which may be done either subtly or noticeably. The key idea is that these intertextual references allow for a deeper understanding of the text. Also, the text or key ideas used previously have become familiar to the audience or reader, which can make the story more relevant and memorable. You can think of it as a story retold in another story. Let's try comparing texts that can be linked together and to find out how the idea and concept apply intertextuality. Have you ever heard of the song Love Story by Taylor Swift? The song makes intertextual references to Romeo and Juliet, which is a play written by Shakespeare, and The Scarlet Letter, which is a historical fiction written by Nathaniel Hawthorne. Intertextual reference is evident as shown in these lyrics, "'Cause you were Romeo, I was a Scarlet Letter, and my daddy said stay away from Juliet." And also speaking of Scarlet Letter, the movie ECA was also based on the same novel. Another example is an excerpt from the story Ease of Eden by John Steinbeck, which reads, "Even God can have a preference, can he? Let's suppose God liked lamb better than vegetables. I think I do myself. Cain brought him a bunch of carrots maybe, and God said, I don't like this. Try again. Bring me something I like and I'll set you up alongside your brother." But Cain got mad. His feelings were hurt. And when a man's feelings are hurt, he wants to strike at something, and Abel was in the way of his anger. This work of literature makes the allusion on the biblical story of Cain and Abel abundantly clear. This is an example of allusion as a type of intertextuality. Another example of intertextuality is the story of the Philippine fictional superhero Darna. Does it sound similar with any other story? What about Shasha Saturna? The graphic novel Shasha Saturna is a parody of Darna. A parody is an intertextual technique which allows writers to use an existing story as a reference in coming up with another story with a slightly different version, mostly done to entertain or to make the audience laugh. The concept presented in Darna has been adapted in Shasha Saturna. While Darna is about a woman who gains superpowers, the latter is about a gay man who transforms into a superpowered woman. The villain in Darna, known as Valentina, the Queen of Snakes, is inspired by the Gorgon's race of Greek mythology, which features Medusa, the woman with living poisonous snakes as her hair, and who can turn those who look at her in the eyes into stone. Intertextuality is using similar concepts from an already existing literature and adapting it to deepen the meaning or value of the newly created piece of work. Sometimes you can think of it as a story within a story or a story from another story. If you're familiar with the movie parodies or movies in which concepts are taken from another movie and give it a different twist, these are examples of products of intertextuality. Intertextuality is the interconnection between similar or related works of literature that reflect and influence a reader's interpretation of the text. It is a literary device that creates an interrelationship between texts and generates related understanding in separate works. The term intertextuality was developed in 1966 by the French semiotician Julia Kristeva. She created the term from the Latin word intertexto, which means to intermingle while weaving. One example of intertextuality are fanfictions. Fanfiction is a great example of deliberate intertextuality. In fanfiction, authors enter the fictional worlds of other authors and create their own stories. For example, let's say a Lord of the Rings fanfiction might tell the story of minor characters or add new characters to the world of Middle-earth. Sometimes fanfictions become extremely successful in its own right. For example, 50 Shades of Grey was originally written as Twilight fanfiction. Another example, Martin Luther King's writing was heavily influenced by the work of Mohandas Gandhi, especially in the area of nonviolent resistance. Much of this intertextuality was deliberate. With King explicitly crediting Gandhi as one of his influences. Scholars, however, have debated whether there might have been other aspects of Gandhi's writing, such as his aesthetic style, that also influenced King in a more latent way. Other examples of intertextuality. The main plotline of Disney's The Lion King is a take on Shakespeare's Hamlet. The structure of James Joyce's Ulysses is modeled after Homer's Odyssey. J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter series makes use of T.H. White's The Sword in Stone, C.S. Lewis' The Chronicles of Narnia, and J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings. Jane Smiley's A Thousand Acres is a contemporary retelling of Shakespeare's King Lear. What's Regards to Sea by Jean Rhys is an intertextual work of Charlotte Brant's John Eyre, as it includes the wife of a secondary character from the novel as one of his own and offers an alternative point of view on similar social issues of the prior narrative. Philip Pullman's His Dark Material series is an inverted retelling of John Milton's Paradise Lost. And Matt Groening's television show The Simpsons uses multiple intertextual references to literature, films, and other TV shows and commercials for its storylines and jokes. Intertextual figures include number 1, allusion. It is a figure of speech in which an object or circumstance from unrelated context is referred to covertly or indirectly. If the allusion is explicitly stated as opposed to indirectly implied, it is usually termed as reference. Examples of allusion are the following. He was lying so obviously you could almost see his nose growing. Okay, so that is an allusion to Pinocchio. Jack and Rose are star-crossed lovers. Star-crossed lovers, that is an allusion to Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. It's hard being an adult. I wish I were a child forever. So this is an allusion to Peter Pan. And Kimi in Kimidora, why? Am I my sister's keeper? Among intertextual figures is also quotation. It is the repetition of one expression as part of another one, particularly when the quoted expression is well known or explicitly attributed by citation to its original source, and it is indicated by quotation marks. Number 3, a calque or loan translation is a word or phrase borrowed from another language when literal, word-for-word or root-for-root translation. When used as a verb, to calque means to borrow a word or phrase from another language while translating its components, so as to create a new lexeme in the target language. Example, Adam's apple is a calque of the French pomme d'Adam, and beer garden is a calque of the German Biergarten. Here are more examples of calque or loan translation. In Latin, we have agenda, index, memorandum. In German, we have Angst and Blitz. French, accident, chef, and fierce. For Italian, we have concerto, pizza, and scenario. And from Japanese, we have bonsai, haiku, and karaoke. Number 4, plagiarism. Plagiarism is considered academic dishonesty and a breach of journalistic ethics. In academia and industry, it is a serious ethical offense, punishable due to prejudicial causes such as copyright infringement. In the 1st century, the use of the Latin word plagiarus, kidnapper, to denote stealing someone else's work was pioneered by the Roman poet Martial, who complained that another poet had kidnapped his verses. Plagiary, a derivative of plagiarus, was introduced into English in 1601 by John Matthias Van Johnson during the Jacobean era to describe someone guilty of literary theft. Number 5, translation. It is a communication of the meaning of source language text by means of an equivalent target language text. 6. A parody, also called spoof or lampoon, is a work created to imitate, make fun of, or comment on an original work. Its subject offers style or some other target by means of satiric or ironic imitation. Dennis Diderot's Encyclopedia distinguishes between the parody and burlesque. A good parody is a fine amusement, capable of amusing and instructing the most sensible and polished minds. The burlesque is a miserable buffoonery which can only please the populace. Unlike parody, pastiche celebrates rather than mocks the work it imitates. The word pastiche is a French cognate of the Italian noun pasticcio, which is a pie filling mixed from diverse ingredients. Pastiche differs from parody in that pastiche isn't making fun of the works it imitates, okay? However, the tone of pastiche is often humorous. The TV show 30 Rock is about a television studio, so there are plenty of opportunities for prestige. In various episodes, the show mimics classic shows like The Brady Bunch or Seinfeld and major television events like Olympics. From the tone of the show, it's clear that these imitations come from a place of irreverent love, so they fall into the category of prestige rather than parody. Prestige is used constantly in animated television shows like The South Park and The Simpsons. For example, there is an episode of South Park that is animated almost entirely in the style of the classic Scooby-Doo cartoons, and another that uses an anime style. So the plot lines of these episodes also mimic the same genres. Number 8, appropriation. It is a reworking or reimagination of a well-known text to change or extend its meaning. For example, Marcel Duchamp's artwork LHOOQ is an appropriation of Da Vinci's Mona Lisa. Duchamp took an image of the painting and drew a mustache on it. And lastly, adaptation. A film, TV drama, or stage play is based on a written work. For example, J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter has a film adaptation. Now, what are the steps in identifying and analyzing intertextuality? Number 1, you have to read the passage to identify any clear intertextual references to literature, music, art, film, or another text type. Second, research or use your own knowledge of the text you have identified and find any themes or messages that can be linked to your current text. Number 3, determine the significance of using the reference. How does it complement the author's intended message? Does it deepen your current understanding and perspective of the text? And lastly, you have to discuss your insights. Okay, so at this point, let's talk about the activities that you will be doing for this week. So there are only 2 activities for this week's module. The first one is you have to reflect and write your answers on the 3 questions in activity number 1. The first question is, analyze the play The World is an Apple that you have read in our first module. What other text or story can you relate it to? Have you read or heard a story in which an apple's significance is highlighted or emphasized? What similarities have you observed from this story with the play? If you can't think of any, you can review Adam and Eve's story from the Bible or the story of Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs. Your answers will be rated based on the intertextuality rubric that can be found on your module. Number 2, how does intertextuality help you understand certain concepts or ideas better? And last question, do you think borrowing ideas from previous works helps writers deepen the meaning or value of their own work? Why or why not? Activity 2 is divided into 2 parts. The first part is you have to find the correct answer for each statement from the words in the box. Okay, and you can refer to the module if you are not sure of your answers. And the second part is you have to write T if the statement is true and false if it is not. So basically, activity number 2 has 15 items. Okay, so those are the all activities that you need to accomplish for this week, and that is mainly about intertextuality. So thank you so much for watching this video and good luck on your modules.